Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the CFA Society Emirates session on recruiting in the Middle East with our speaker, Louise Vine. I am Lama Dargham, CFA, and I will be your moderator for today. I am part of the business development team at Quilvest Capital Partners and have been since 2015, working alongside our investment teams, designing investment programs in line with our investors' expectations. Before joining Quilvest, I was a teaching assistant, mentoring MBA and senior students in advanced finance courses. I pursued a bachelor's in mathematics, followed by a BS in finance. I earned my charter in 2019 and have been an active member of the CFA Society Emirates since. An overview of our agenda today, we will be spending the first few minutes of our webinar talking about CFA Emirates and its ongoing efforts to add value to members and provide them with all the necessary tools to succeed. Louise will then take us through a 45-minute presentation discussing everything you need to know about recruitment and how to secure a new job, followed by a 10-minute Q&A session. A reminder that our session today is about general recruitment and not specific to any industry or sector. The audience can submit questions during the session, but the questions will only be answered during Q&A. A note that today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on the CFA Emirates website as of Monday. CFA Emirates is one of the oldest and largest societies in the region, established in 2002 with over 1,000 members to date. The society has been actively organizing events, from the Forecast Dinner to MENA Investment Congress, to keep its members connected and well-informed, while providing educational resources for both members and candidates, in addition to offering career support through different initiatives, especially with the CFA Career Center. Everybody knows that in normal times, job hunting is not an easy task. We'll talk about doing so with the current job market. The CFA Institute and Society Emirates dedicated a career center, which is a helpful platform listing unique opportunities in the financial services industry and serving as a great guidance resource for both members and candidates, using tools to clarify career goals and future-proofing your career. If you haven't done so already, we encourage you to visit the website mentioned in this slide to build your profile in the Career Center. Listed are the guidelines on how to do so, but please feel free to contact your local CFA Society if you run into some difficulties. Without further ado, allow me to introduce our speaker for today, Louise Vine. Louise is an experienced finance and accounting recruiter with 16 years of experience that started with Robert Half in 2004. She moved to Dubai 6 months before the 2008 crash, so she's seen it all, the ups and the downs. She is the managing director and founder of Inspire Selection, which is a boutique recruitment agency based in Dubai. She established Inspire Selection in 2012 with 10 other recruiters covering different career fields. Louise will walk us through the tips and tricks to help find and secure a new job in the Middle East. Her candid approach will advise on CV writing, tackling the job application system, making it into the shortlist, and selling yourself in an interview, as well as negotiating your job offer. Welcome to our session today, Louise. We're happy to have you, and please feel free to take it from here.
Thank you very much, Lama. Hello, everybody. Okay, so I'm just going to talk you through the recruitment process, and this is a slide that I've done with different stages on it. Basically, if you don't get through each stage, obviously you're not going to get to the final part, which is starting your new job. So each stage is extremely important, starting with sending your CV and applying for the job. If the CV doesn't look right, then you're not going to even get a phone call from the employer or recruiter. Obviously, then you're not going to get to the interview, and you're obviously not going to get the offer at the end. So I'm going to take each step step by step. So step one is sending your CV and applying. This is the first opportunity you've got to sell yourself. So if the CV doesn't look good, then you're not going to get this phone call. So the purpose of the CV is to make you look attractive enough on paper to the person who is screening the CV, and interesting enough that they may want to give you a call and meet you. So the CV needs to look really amazing. Otherwise, like I said, you're not going to make it to stage two. There are different styles of CVs. A finance CV is very different to a marketing CV. So bear in mind that you guys are finance and it shouldn't be too bright and colourful, in my opinion. I prefer something that's quite corporate looking. Keywords should be easy to find. because if they're not easy to find, the person reading the CV will assume that you don't have the skills required to do the job. So this is a CV that I just found on the internet, and it's not a finance CV, it's a general manager's CV from hospitality, but you can see how nice and clear it is. It's only 2 pages, which I think is a little bit short. You should probably try and go on to 3 pages, just to make sure that all the information is in there. But anything longer than that, and the person reading the CV is not going to read all the way to the 4th, 5th, 6th page. So think about keeping it short and concise. So we can see that this lady here has got her expertise in these blue boxes. So it's just something really easy to see straight away. She's got key achievements under each role. I know some people put all their key achievements at the top of the first page, but you don't necessarily know which achievements are relevant to which role, and it's confusing, and then it's a bit of a pain for the person reading the CV to work out which job it belongs to. So just list the achievement under each job. Obviously your education needs to be on there, and as far as a CFA qualified person goes, you should probably put your letters after your name. So this lady would have Jane Doe CFA in brackets. Okay, on to the next page. So things to think about: explaining gaps in your employment. If you were on maternity leave, you should probably just put that in there. Otherwise, people will wonder why you weren't working for a year or 2. Or maybe you were looking after a sick relative. There's no harm in putting that on there. It's better than just having a blank. Obviously, languages are important. Accurate contact details. Make sure you've spelled your email address correctly. Make sure the phone number has the country code on it. Simple things, but believe me, some people get it wrong. A professional looking email address as well. Something that you were using when you were 16 years old may not be the best thing to be using right now. So just keep it professional and related to your name. Obviously the photo needs to be professional looking. We'll get onto that later as well. Formatting. If I see a CV which is, the formatting is all over the place, the font is all different sizes, there's 20 different colors, I can't stand it, and that person, honestly, I don't even look at the content of the CV. So these are just things that you need to think about. I would put the text in navy or dark grey, or ideally black, and if you do want to introduce one colour, then keep it corporate looking, so probably navy, like I said. Obviously check the spelling and grammar, punctuation. So as a financial analyst, you should have very good attention to detail, and make sure that you're spelling simple words correctly. Now, we have all worked in different countries. If you were working 15 years ago in Australia, then you moved to Hong Kong, and then you moved to Dubai, you may have different currencies written on the CV. So you may have said that you're working for a bank which was 5 billion Aussie dollar turnover. Just convert the currency into probably US dollars or dirhams, because this is the audience that we're dealing with here. Obviously, we should include the ERP systems that you're working with as well. And I like to see personal interests because it brings the CV to life. It's not just text. It's really nice to know whether or not these candidates are into kite surfing or hanging out with family. It brings a 3-dimensional aspect to a 2-dimensional piece of paper. So the content of the CV. Lots of people just copy the text from the original job description that they were given when they applied to the job. It's not nice to read, it's not personal. So the CV should be about you and your experience, and not just about this job description. Your CV should also be tailored for the job that you're applying for. So if some people have quite a varied background, let's say if you were a finance manager, but you want to get more into treasury, then obviously pick out more treasury keywords and put them higher up the CV, kind of emphasize those words. So I think you all know what tailoring your CV means, but really it is important. The same person can make their CV look very different depending on which job they're applying for. So include relevant jobs only. If you feel that your CV is getting too long, there's no need to include jobs that you were doing 15 years ago. Maybe you were doing accounts payable and now you're head of treasury, then it's not really relevant. You should still include the dates and the job title, but there's no need to list all the experience underneath that job. So the next thing is as well, don't copy and paste the same information for each job. If you've been a treasury manager for 10 years and you've had 3 jobs, don't literally copy and paste the same text under each role. Even though you may have been doing the same thing, there's no need. You've got to think about if this CV is fun to read, and nobody likes to read the same thing over and over again. Also, think about who is reading your CV. So here in the UAE, your CV is probably going to be read by a HR or recruiter assistant first, the person who's screening the CV. Don't make it too technical. Don't use jargon that they're not going to understand. So these guys they will have a job description and they'll just be picking out the words, seeing if it's on your CV. If you elaborate too much, it may be a little bit over their head and you may not make the cut. So people management and who you reported to, this is important because some people call themselves a CFO and actually they're managing one person, and some people are a CFO and they're managing regional teams. So it's important for the person reading your CV to know how big your team is, how big the reach is, and who you report to. So if you report to the managing director or if you report into a finance manager, it is important. It helps us understand where you fit in the structure. So numbers and figures are also important. It makes the CV a bit more interesting. So an example that I would use would be to say if you were a credit controller and your day-to-day job is chasing payments by the phone, you're collecting money, and you may have a monthly target to hit. But imagine if you receive a CV and they say, I reduced the DSO from 120 days to 60 days in the first 3 months. I collected $4 million worth of previously written off debt, or I've achieved 150% of my quarterly target. The person reading the CV is going to think, wow, this person's really amazing. I want to have them in my team. Just makes it a bit more interesting. Now, how do we look at a CV? Obviously, we don't spend 20 minutes reading every single word on a CV, which is why I said, you know, the keywords need to stand out. I literally scan a CV in 20 seconds or less. Some of them, like I said, I look at the colors and I look at the font and I think, no, this person's not corporate enough for my client. So it can be as quick as a 1-second look. So the CV needs to look amazing. Qualifications really need to stand out, and the photo needs to be really professional. If it looks like a photo that was taken in a dark room and you can't see the face, you know, what are you hiding? What else might you be hiding about yourself? So level of seniority is something that I would check very quickly. So let's say if I'm looking for a finance manager and the person applying to this job is a managing director, that person, even if the CV looks amazing and they've got a nice professional photo and they might even have the relevant qualifications, why is an MD applying for this finance manager role? It's not right. And this person may be a great candidate, but they're not right for the role. So just make sure that you're only applying for jobs that are relevant. Obviously, you're not going to get a phone call if you're applying for the wrong type of role. So you're not going to get to the next stage if these things don't match. If I'm a little bit unsure about someone, I would also firstly look at LinkedIn and check the dates on the person's CV, match the dates on LinkedIn. And also I would check potentially Facebook. I'm not up to date enough to be on Instagram, but I know a lot of people are, and you should think about what you're putting out into the world about your personal life. We've actually had clients who have pulled interviews once they've done some digging on the candidates because they didn't like the way that they were enjoying themselves on a weekend, shall we say. So your personal brand, remember that you're selling yourself, and your social media is so important. So first thing you should do when you start looking for a job is to check your visibility settings and make sure you've got appropriate photos online. Based on those photos, would you hire yourself? You know, you're a corporate person. Think about the image that you're portraying. And like I said, remember, you won't make it to the interview stage if the social media profile is not appealing or if the dates don't match. So just moving on to LinkedIn. I think most people have a LinkedIn profile, but not everybody's profile is as good as it could be. So hopefully I'm not pointing out the obvious here, but there are two ways that a recruiter or an employer uses LinkedIn to find candidates. So the first one is that we actively headhunt candidates through searching. And secondly, we also advertise jobs and we hope that someone relevant would apply. So here's a title of a job that I advertised a couple of weeks ago. You can see that 3,200 people applied to this job. That's a lot of candidates applying for roles in this market, as you can imagine, but your profile needs to really stand out amongst these thousands. So my next few slides will hopefully help you with this. We use filters and keyword searches and the correct positioning of information within your LinkedIn profile in order that you might appear higher up the search. And on here, if you apply for a job, LinkedIn also sort of does the keyword searching for us amongst those applicants. So if we click on that box there, it will take you to the top 25 relevant matches or something like that. But obviously your page is only useful if you include relevant data, otherwise LinkedIn is not going to be able to find you. So this is a piece of someone's LinkedIn profile. Now, as you can see, they haven't kept their LinkedIn profile up to date. This is a lady who I placed in her role 10 months ago. She's from the UK and she was obviously very busy updating LinkedIn back then, and then since then it's all kind of gone a bit astray. So she really needs to update her LinkedIn profile. Obviously check spelling. You should also write in the first person. So this is someone else, this about. So this is a lady called Vivian who's writing about herself, but in the third person. I just think it's really strange. LinkedIn is your profile. It should be, I did this, I did that. That's my opinion, and also the opinion of lots of other recruiters. So up to you if you want to do that. So update your qualifications on LinkedIn in 2 places. There should be under licenses and certifications, as well as education. So this makes it easier for us to find you. I'll show you on the next page why. Obviously, your contact details need to be on LinkedIn if you're looking for a job. Not necessarily in the information on the first page, but when you sign up to LinkedIn, you do put in your phone number. So just make sure that phone number is up to date, make sure your email address is current, and make sure that it's visible to people who are looking for it, such as recruiters, because you can hide that information. And then obviously if the information is hidden, we can't reach you quickly enough, you might miss out on a job. So get recommendations from your bosses and other senior management team colleagues. It's important, and it just adds something to the LinkedIn profile. So like I said, I think this is in the wrong place here at the bottom, but keep your profile up to date. So as you can see, this one at the bottom here says I am involved in client-facing work, but that's 5 years ago, 3 years ago that she wrote that. It's written in the past, in the current tense. It should be written in the past tense. So how you appear in a list, I guess that most of you have probably done a search on LinkedIn for someone in the past, and it comes up with a list like this. So you can see the photos, and these 3 all look professional. Some people I've seen wedding day photos. Yes, you do look nice in your wedding dress, but is it really appropriate on LinkedIn if you're a finance person? The headline is the bit that appears under your name, so it just needs to stand out. Nothing crazy, just a job title and a brief description of what you do. And you can also put your letters after your name here. So as you can see on these ones, the one at the top, she hasn't put the letters after her name, but she has at least put it in that headline, so it is visible. So put keywords throughout your profile, and don't just put CFA, because some people might not just be looking for CFA, they might be looking for Chartered Financial Analyst. Same with P&L. Think about writing P&L and profit and loss, so that you've just got more chance of someone finding you. So once you've applied to a job, this is what a recruiter or an employer sees. These are the 3,200 applicants. You appear in a list with more detail. So as a recruiter, we have this thing called LinkedIn Recruiter. It just gives us a lot more, more filters. So as you can see on the left-hand side, these are the filters. We can filter people out depending on their location. So we get a lot of questions like, how do you cope with 3,000 people applying to a job? Well, we can filter these wrong candidates out very easily. The first thing I do is go to current location. So if you are sitting in the UAE at the moment, but you've forgotten to update your location and it still shows that you're in India, you definitely need to change that location. The other things are we can search by companies. So if one of my clients wants someone who's worked in the Big Four, I can put in the Big Four company names in there and can search on any of those. Skills, obviously, if you've updated your skills on LinkedIn and we put in a certain skill on the left-hand side there, then you will come up on a search. So the more information you're putting into LinkedIn, the easier it is going to be for us to find you. Industries as well. This is quite important for some clients. Some clients are very specific when it comes to industry. It's quite difficult sometimes for us to educate our clients that doesn't really matter what industry you come from. However, obviously some industries it is. Keywords as well, this is another thing at the bottom. So, you know, I said P&L or profit and loss. I would probably search for P&L and I would search for profit and loss as well if I don't get enough candidates coming up mentioning P&L in there. So as you can see on the main screen in the middle here, we've got education. So some people are just putting their certificates under the certifications section, which is fine, you need to put it in there. But if you don't put your CFA under education, it's not going to appear on this screen. So you just need to make it stand out to the person who's flicking through these 3,000 people. So waiting for the phone call, which may never come. The recruiters never get back to you. I know, it is hard work looking for a job, but you can't just wait for the recruiters to call you. We don't have time to call everybody, but if you try and call us, you may get through. You should also send a LinkedIn message. However, it doesn't always work. As you can imagine, the volume of LinkedIn messages that we receive. As soon as I advertise a job, I would say probably half those people send me a LinkedIn message as well. But you might as well try. There's no harm in trying. Keep phoning as well. If we get a message that someone's tried to call, we will try and call you back. Not everybody does, of course, I do. But we may not be available, and then we may forget because the phone's rung and it's just gone out of your mind. So just keep trying. You might actually get through. And if you really think that you are the best person for that job, we will definitely want to hear from you. Next thing to do is just check your junk mail as well. Recruiters do send a lot of emails. So sometimes our emails end up in people's junk folders or spam. So if you are applying to lots of jobs, you never know, you might actually get an email from somebody. Now, I don't know if you know about this thing called Lucia. This is like a plug-in download. It's a free tool which you can just download off the internet, and it's this little lady here. She sits on your LinkedIn page, and as you can see, this red number 3, that tells me that Lucia has 3 different contact methods for this particular person. So that might mean 1 phone number and 2 different email addresses. So, you know, when I mentioned make sure your contact details are visible on LinkedIn, not everybody's is, but sometimes Lucia, I don't know how she does it, but she has the contact details. So I think you get something like 5 credits a month or a quarter, and then you can buy more credits. So if you really want to contact somebody in a company and you don't know how to, then just try this method. You just click on the little icon that comes up, and then it shows you part of the email address or part of the phone number, and if you want to look at the rest of it, then that uses up 1 credit. So once you get in touch with a recruiter, do your best to be nice to this person, because this is the first interview stage. You have to impress the recruiter or the employer, even on the phone, even if it's a quick call to say, hi, I've got your CV, let's arrange another time when we can go through your CV in more detail. What we don't want to hear is, oh, recruiters, you never call us back. So just be nice. So now, if they're not responding still, I just wanted to give you some reasons why. Recruitment is a sales-driven environment, and some agencies have really high targets, and if you don't hit your targets, then you get fired. So the worry is that if people are just returning calls all day long, they're not going to have time to hit all their other targets. They're going to lose their job. We are inundated, especially at the moment. Typically, we have 1,000 to 1,500 applications per vacancy, and currently there's 3,500 to 4,000 people applying for those jobs. Now, if you can imagine that we work on maybe between 5 and 15 vacancies at any one time, that's a lot of CVs appearing in our files. So it's really not, it's just not feasible to call everybody back. So on the flip side though, is it you that they're not replying to for a reason? Are you just not the right type of candidate for the recruiter? So recruiters, usually there are generalist recruiters, but most recruiters are going to be specialist in one particular field. There's no point, for example, you sending your CV to, let's say, perhaps even me. I am a specialist in chartered accountancy recruitment in commerce and industry. So I do receive CVs from people who are chartered accountants, but they're based in investment banks. And my clients in oil and gas or in manufacturing or FMCG, they're just not interested in candidates from financial services. So the candidates may be awesome. However, they may just not be my type of candidate. I do normally let people know and point them in the right direction to another recruiter. But it could be that you're just not approaching the right person. Have you become a bit of a pest? I've got one candidate who sends me a message at 7:30 every morning just to say good morning, don't forget me today. It's too much. You need to ascertain with the recruiter what is a suitable length of time between calls, and it depends on your level of seniority. If you're a CFO, then there's not that many jobs, probably once every 6 to 8 weeks, probably. If you're in the category where there are more jobs and you are actively looking for a job because you're not working at the moment, then perhaps once a week would be sufficient. So are you just applying to the wrong jobs? We do see candidates who see the word finance in the job description and they just apply, regardless of what it actually says in the job requirements. If it says you need to be an Arabic speaker, you need to have Iqama in Saudi. If you don't have these things, there's no point applying. You're just wasting your time. So how to handle the interview? There's so many interview tips, and I'm just going to run through a few important ones. So don't be too late or too early, because some of our clients interview people back to back, and it's not nice for the candidates to cross each other in the corridor if you arrive too early. See 5 minutes early. If you do get there early, then sit outside in your car or in reception, but don't be hovering outside the interview room. So remember to smile as well. Even if you're shy and or nervous, try not to be, obviously, but just remember that people buy people, and the interviewer is probably not as nervous as you, so they really are analysing you and how you're interacting. Are you a friendly person? Can I see you sitting next to me in the office? If you're not smiling and you're on edge too much, it might put them off. So just be super friendly. Obviously, attire, you need to be suited and booted and looking fresh. But believe it or not, I have had some candidates who've turned up looking like they haven't slept for a week. So handshake is so important. Even at CFO level, I've shaken hands with people who just hold their hand out like this, and a good firm handshake is what you need to do, and obviously maintain eye contact all the time. So there's a difference between appearing confident and arrogant, and it's a fine line. You need to blow your own trumpet in the interview, but definitely don't come across as arrogant. It's always best to over prepare. So check everything about this company, go through their financials, look at their international offices, obviously know everything possible, just in case they throw a question at you. Not just about the company, but obviously what's happening in the market and how that has impacted the industry. And obviously you must know everything about your CV. So this is all the dates on your CV. You don't want to get caught out if you mention it, you started a job in March when actually it was in August. There are interview tips on our website and obviously on the CFA Institute's website as well. Here are some tricky interview questions. Why did you leave your last job? Lots of people ask me for help with this one. I think you just need to be honest, but not necessarily reveal all information. So don't moan about a previous boss, and definitely don't give away confidential information about a past employer. So by that, I mean turnover figures which aren't available, or let's say nobody wants to know that your last company is making a loss. It has happened in the past that I had a CFO go from one retail group to another, and the CEO was asking him loads of questions about the competitor, and the CFO just gave him all the information this guy wanted. He thought he was a brilliant candidate, however, was worried that this guy was not, he was too loose with his lips, I think was what the actual feedback was. And if he was to hire that guy, would he go around telling everybody about their finances? So in the end, didn't give the guy an offer. So what is your current package? This is quite a difficult one because especially in this market, salaries are up and down. How do you answer this one? What if you're earning 20,000 at the moment and you know that you're going for an interview for a job that's paying 30? Wouldn't it be nice if you could get 30 and get that increase? But then they ask you what your current salary is. Well, you can't lie, but you could kind of give them a political answer and just say, well, I feel I am currently underpaid for my skill set. And then you could say, well, I think someone of my skills, with my skills, should be earning around 30,000. So what salary are you looking for? This is what I just said. Use the phrase, I think someone with my skills is worth around X in the market. Or you could just put it off to a later interview and just say, we can discuss this later if you think I'm going to be successful enough to get the role. If they really do push you, you have to give them an answer, but you could say, I'm looking for a package of around 30,000, and that package can be broken down how you want it to be broken down. And then it's a bit more ambiguous. Now, there is no point in giving a range. If you say, I'm looking for 25 to 30, they're not going to hear 30, they're only going to hear 25. Now, you've mentioned 25, they're not going to offer 30. Why do you think you're the best candidate for this job? So a lot of people fall into the trap of saying, well, because I'm punctual and I try hard and I'm a gold medalist. You've already been through all these things, it's probably mentioned on your CV. You need to go back to the job description. You need to say, well, okay, I understand that you're looking for someone who has multi-currency experience. I have this. I've worked in all these different countries. I've worked in the DIFC. We had, think about the job description and relate your experience to each point on that job description. So once, hopefully, you've made it to stage 4 and you're at offer stage, things can still go wrong even at this stage. It's a lot easier to use a third-party person to negotiate the offer, especially if it's a recruiter, because we know how much we can push that client. If you're dealing with this yourself, you've got to be careful. So how much do you want this job? That's only something that you know the answer to. You have to be flexible so that you don't lose it. Don't push this client so much, this employer so much that that they think you're being greedy. Think about what your market worth is right now. So we're not living in 2015 anymore. So don't compare your salary to back then. You know, if you've just lost your job, you've been made redundant, you've been in the same role for 5 years, every year you're getting an increment, you're probably not going to be getting that sort of salary right now, especially because of COVID. Just think about what other people with your skills are earning right now. Salaries have come down in the last 5 years, especially at senior level. Kind of mid-management it's been the same, but it's not really increased. So don't think that just because you're changing your job, you want a 20% increase, because it's probably not going to happen. So don't focus on getting a pay rise. Focus on your career prospects, and most importantly, job security. You don't want to take a job which might be the first one that comes along, but in 6 months' time you're looking for another job. It's really hard work. Obviously you've got to stage 4, but it's really hard getting to this stage. Don't ruin it at the last stage. So as I mentioned before, if they ask you for a salary, try not to give them a range, because they're not going to offer you the highest number. So have a number in mind that you're happy with, and maybe you can go 1,000 more, because if they actually come back and offer you what you're asking for, then that would be a miracle as well. So you can always negotiate down, but you can't negotiate up. So these are my final thoughts. Only look for a job if you really have to. It is really hard work, and it takes up a lot of time, and it's disheartening most of the time. So if you're looking for a job, just maybe you're a little bit bored, maybe try and find something else to fulfill your needs. Maybe do another qualification, maybe take up another hobby. If you're looking for a job because you're out of work, then obviously that's a different story. So I believe at the moment job security is most important. Employers are hesitant, but they are still hiring. So we have made placements in the last 2 months. Not as many. I reckon we're placing probably 30% of the placements that we used to make. And things are moving really slowly. I don't think the market here right now is as bad as what it was in 2008 though. So think about how you're going to present yourself well on Zoom. Although obviously we are now getting back into offices, a lot of people are still doing Teams or Zoom interviews. So just think about what you've got in your background, and make sure you can concentrate and still have a suit and tie on if you're a guy, or obviously look nice and smart if you're a lady as well. And finally, good luck with your search. Thanks, Lama. That's me done with my presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Louise, for the detailed tips and tricks that you've shared with us today. I think everybody, no matter where you are in your career, you're going to use those to enhance how you present yourself in your CV and then on your LinkedIn profile. We have actually received many questions today, and we will go through as many as we can. While respecting the time limit, I believe we still have around 17 minutes to go through these questions. So one question that we've received is for new graduates, graduates who have 1 to 2 years of experience. What are your tips on how to present themselves on the CV? What are the good suggestions to have a powerful CV that would go through?
That's a good question. Anything that you've done at university to get involved in any kind of societies or clubs, anything that brings out your personality. So if you, at this age and stage in your career, your personality is probably going to be getting you the job. So the hobbies that you have, it's any kind of intern work that you've done, and obviously being an intern is so important at this stage. If you haven't got any work experience, you should try and get some. There is an agency, I don't know if you've heard of it, called Olive. I think it's OLIV. olive.ae, and they specialize in the UAE in interns and graduates. And I believe they've got quite a lot of roles. Some are paid and some are not, but the experience is obviously important.
Awesome. So basically they should focus on extracurricular activities, on how to engage with the society, with their colleagues, and then again add to their CVs any internships that are relevant basically to what they've studied or to their field, to their CVs. To make it more powerful. Thank you for this. You've mentioned during the presentation that with the situation, the current pandemic and the COVID situation, we're not having face-to-face interviews. I know for a fact that when you have a face-to-face interview, basically your personality and how you bring yourself, you have much of an impact on the interview. How do you deal with this through Zoom, for example? How are you able to show your personality and to persuade whoever is in front of you using a video chat?
I think it's probably potentially a bit easier to have a Zoom or video interview, actually. Historically, I always advise my clients against Skype. Nobody really wanted to do it because you don't get to feel what the candidate's like. But actually, I've kind of come away from that thought because now obviously we're using VCC calls all the time. I think when you're in your own home, you feel more relaxed. How do you deal with it and get your personality across? I think you just have to be yourself. And I don't know, there's no easy way. An interview is not easy anyway. And doing it on a screen from your own bedroom, does it make it easier? Maybe for some people, maybe not for others.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question, but
it does. I mean, we were just speaking about this and we were saying that when you're at the comfort of your own home, you might be able to show a different side of your personality that you wouldn't normally show when you go to an interview in a new place. So yeah, that was on point. We just received an awesome question, to be honest, and it was on my list of questions that I wanted to know as well. Do you have any tips for those who want to transition to a different role or even a career change? Especially in this market where most companies are looking for someone who's plug and play.
Yeah, in this country, even before COVID came along, it is really hard to change career.
Yeah,
there's an oversupply of candidates most of the time, unless you've got a really unique skill, like if you were a tax manager and you speak 5 languages, you know, there's not many other people like that. If you, I've forgotten the question, sorry. My mind's gone blank.
If we're going through a career change, whether it was within
the career change. Yeah. Well, right now it's not easy. And I would say if you are still employed and you're not unemployed and looking for a job, the easiest way to get into a slightly different role is to speak to your HR about it and ask them to do it. So they already know you, they know your skills and strengths, and hopefully they would offer you or find you something if it came up in your current business. But if you are looking right now, let's say if you're a financial analyst and you want to get into a HR role, even if you've studied HR, you're up against, if you're wanting to go out into the big wide world of job hunting, the number of HR people who have relevant experience, honestly, you're not really going to stand a chance.
Yeah.
So you would stand a much better chance if you stay within your current company but have a career change within that.
Yeah. I think at this point also what would, I mean, and please correct me if I'm wrong, would help is that if you're looking for a different role that you don't have any experience in, probably adding some courses that are relevant to that, to your set of skills, or going, even if you're desperate for a career change, going on internships and, you know, taking a step down or a demotion, if it's right to say, if it's so important to do the career change.
obviously the studying needs to come before any trying to change careers. You need to prove that you really are interested and that you've got a qualification, or at least you're working towards. But definitely, again, going back to, only applying to relevant jobs. This is perhaps why, as a finance recruiter, I see bus drivers applying for CFO roles. They're, fair play, they're being ambitious, but, if that's a bit extreme. But if you are a financial analyst and you're really sick of numbers and you want to get into human resources, remember, the person receiving your CV doesn't necessarily know you. Well, they don't know you. All they can see is the fact that you've been a financial analyst, and you're not going to make it to the shortlist. So it's really difficult. If you are changing career and you can prove that you've got some experience because you've moved within the same company into a different department, at least you've got your foot on that ladder, in that new career, and you've got a good chance of getting a call.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's not easy. I would probably, sorry, I was going to just add, sit it out a little bit longer and wait for the market to improve, because if you try right now, you've got no chance, and then you'll be really disheartened. And it's nothing against you, it's just this market.
Yeah, definitely. So let's assume that I've went through the tips and tricks that you just mentioned on the CV and LinkedIn, but I still haven't gotten a call, or I wasn't shortlisted for anything. When do you think would be a good time, and how important is it for someone to seek professional advice on how to complete their CV or LinkedIn? Would it be these in particular that are the issue, or might it be, how do you differentiate between how you're writing your CV and LinkedIn that might be the issue, or your experience and the skill sets that you have that might be the issue?
You can't really differentiate, I guess. You could get everything looking amazing on LinkedIn and your CV. Obviously, ask a friend, ask someone in, especially if you've got people in HR, they would know what a good CV looks like. There are some CV writing companies out there who'll enhance your CV. You've just got to think about your market, though. It may not be your fault that you're not getting calls. It could just be the volume of people applying to those roles, who they may all be equally as good as you, but obviously there's only one person who's going to get that job. I think the tip is to be persistent and just don't give up. And you really need to find the person who has advertised that role.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, it's just very tricky as a recruiter to find the right candidate. Honestly, this is why we have a job. Can you imagine? Lots of our clients are saying, "Well, this is great. You're going to be out of a job because all these people are coming into the market, and I won't need a recruitment person anymore." Well, actually, you need us. These people need us more now because there's so many candidates. Where do you even begin to find the right one? So, if you're not getting a phone call, is it because your market is so small, there's not many jobs? Only you would know that. You can work that out by just going on LinkedIn and Gulf Talent, Bait. Are there not many jobs out there? Maybe not. But if you do see a job that you think you're perfect for, you must persist in tracking down that hiring manager, because they will want to hear from you.
Drawing on that, and with the current job market, we were just saying that this is one of the toughest job markets that we've faced since the crash of 2008. So how do you think one can stand out in a crowded market such as the market that we're in right now? We have an oversupply and probably less demand for certain types of candidates. Do you think one would probably take a pay cut, would undervalue how much they should be paid? How do you approach that?
So how do you stand out is the first thing. So do all the things that I've been talking about. So the CV, the LinkedIn profile, social media, make sure it looks good. You need to get to the top of that pile of CVs, which is not easy. But like I said, be persistent, make the phone calls, ask for referrals. Maybe you know someone who works in that company, get in the back door. As far as, what was the final part of your question? Sorry.
How do you, would you undervalue yourself? For example, I mean, in a lot of time,
the salary. Yeah. So when it comes to the salary, don't forget, you're probably not going to discuss the salary until you've already received the phone call. So standing out is one thing, and getting to the interview stage is another thing. Undervaluing yourself by cutting your salary is something that comes way further down the line, and it's a tricky one.
Do you think it would be a good strategy when and if you get to that point in time to the last negotiating offer, probably, or to do that, or no? Do you think someone should stand their ground and just stick with what they want?
I think it depends on what your role is and your level of seniority. So like I said earlier, some levels have been very stable. You know, if one of my clients is looking for a fairly newly qualified management accountant, let's say around 30 years old, the salary is probably going to be around 22 to 25,000, and it's always been that. So if they were looking for a CFO, 5 years ago, a CFO may have been earning 80 to 90,000, but now probably 50,000. So if it comes down to salary, and let's say if the client is picking between you and one other candidate, and do you want to try and undercut the other candidate to get the job? Again, it comes down to you and your circumstances and how desperate you are for that job. I don't think you should undervalue yourself too much, but you've got to think about this market. If all the other CFOs are taking 50,000, but you're really stuck on 70, well, you just got to hope that that client really thinks that you're worth 70. Also, to remember, it's not all about the money to the client, to the employer. You know, if they really love you, they will find an extra 1,000 or 2,000. You know, I had one of my clients a couple of weeks ago. It's a luxury watch maker, multinational company. Their budget was 25 to 30, and I put a mix of candidates in, and I thought they might. The last two candidates, one was looking for 25, one was looking for 30, and I thought, well, they're probably going to go for the 25k one because she is just as good as the other guy who wants 30. But actually, on the final interview, so there was 3 interviews, they asked the candidates what their salary expectations were. He said 30, she said 25, and they still went with him because he had more regional VAT experience. So it's not all about the money. Yeah. So it's about how much that client wants you, and it's also about how much you want that job. It's finding that balance, and that's why it's useful to go through a recruiter, because we know the candidate pretty well and we know the client pretty well, and we can match that. It is more difficult when you're dealing with the employer directly. You've got to kind of ask a few little questions here and there to try and ascertain what their budget might be, not to go over their budget when they ask you what you're looking for. That's why I said try not to put a number on it.
Awesome. We still have a few minutes to go, probably around 2 to 3 minutes to go, but there's one question that I'm just itching to ask. I mean, big companies right now are just going for out of the norm interviews, trying and testing everything that they can on candidates to see how they perform under different circumstances. One personal experience for me has been sitting in an interview room with one director and one assistant director, while one was asking the questions, the other one was just yawning, and then he was bored out of his seat. So it looked like it couldn't wait for him to just, you know, get the interview done. And I think that they were trying to test how I would act under these circumstances. One other interview that I had was, a question was, does your current employer know that you're interviewing or that you're looking for any other jobs? These are just some questions that are uncomfortable and you're not usually ready for. How do you handle this on the spot in an interview?
I think the first point of the person looking bored, or I've had candidates tell me that the interviewer was constantly taking phone calls. It's rude, but I guess that's the way some people are. How do you react to it? I think you've just got to remain professional, do your best. Just take it in your stride. Maybe they are testing you just to see how you act, or maybe that's just the way they are. If they throw some strange questions at you, you can't be prepared for those. But there are so many different interview styles and interview questions that you've got to be prepared for those. You know, there's the STAR technique, competency-based questions. There's all sorts of weird questions that no one can prepare for, like if you were an animal, which one would you be and why? Yeah. So you can only be as prepared as you can be, and otherwise you've just got to be very quick at thinking on your feet.
Yeah, which brings me to my, I think we're overtime, 1 minute overtime, but I'm just going to ask this question. We used to, or probably a few years back, you used to have 1-2 interviews and you would get the job, or you would hear back whether you're accepted or not. Currently, we're hearing, especially in the finance profession, we're hearing about interviews that can go from 3 to 8 interviews for you to either get the job or get an answer. How important do you think would be, and each of these interviews would test something. So like one would test your technical skills, the other would test your thinking, problem solving, other would test your, interpersonal skills. How do you think, how important do you think is the agility and adaptability of candidates is very important for them to get a job or to score a home run, basically?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you have to be prepared for all different types of interviews, but also you should ask before you have the interview, what type of interview should I expect? And then you feel more prepared. So obviously someone is going to be setting the interview up. It may be a HR person, it probably will be, or it could be a recruiter. And just ask them, is this going to be a technical interview? Is it going to be competency-based questions? And then you can prepare those. But yeah, I mean, there are everybody's interview technique is different, and I think also you've just got to try and get to as many interviews as you can just to get some practice. Yeah, I think that's, thank you for this. I think this answers my question. I didn't know that I can answer that I can ask the interviewer or the HR, what kind of interview am I going to be having? I think this is, adds value to everything that you've mentioned before. I think we're 3 minutes over time. So I just wanna thank you, Louise, for everything that you've prepared for today. I wanna thank everyone for joining in on today's session. One final note is that this webinar has been recorded and will be available on the CFA Society Emirates website as of Monday. Thank you again, everybody, for joining in, and have a nice day. Thank you, Lama. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.